Years had passed. Fifi had gone to university, leaving behind the struggles of her childhood and stepping into a new future. She studied tirelessly, determined to become a doctor, not just for herself but for the family that had always sacrificed for her. Fifi, meanwhile, had continued to visit her newfound family, ensuring they never lacked anything. The bond between them remained unbreakable, built on trust, sacrifice, and the kind of love that ran deeper than blood. But the village hadn't forgotten. Whispers followed Fifi wherever she went, some filled with admiration, others with resentment. People spoke of her rise, the wealth she had kept hidden, the way she had rebuilt Findi's family from the ground up. Her biological parents had heard the stories, but they had never dared to approach her. Until tragedy struck. As Fifi sat in the quiet comfort of her home, staring at her phone, the weight of unspoken decisions pressing against her chest. She had ignored the messages, dismissed the whispers in the village, refused to let the news shake the foundation she had rebuilt. But then came the knock. Slow, hesitant. She already knew who it was. Findi stood at the door, her white coat still buttoned, her face serious, yet conflicted. There was no small talk, no pleasantries, just the truth, delivered with careful precision. Fifi, Findi said softly. Your father has been admitted to the hospital. He suffered a stroke. And, she paused, watching the shift in Fifi's face. I've been assigned as his doctor. Fifi stiffened, gripping the edges of her chair as if bracing herself for an impact that had already arrived. Silence stretched between them. She didn't speak. She didn't move. She just felt, the memories rushing back, the pain settling deep in her bones. The night they had thrown her out. The rejection. The shame. The way they had acted as though she was never theirs to begin with. And now? Now they needed her? Findi took a slow step forward. Fifi. I know this isn't easy. Fifi exhaled sharply, shaking her head. I don't want to go, she murmured. The words were barely audible, but Findi heard them loud and clear. Findi crossed her arms, tilting her head slightly, her voice softer now. I know. But you have to decide, are you going to let the past keep its hold on you, or are you going to face it? Fifi clenched her jaw, her heartbeat loud in her ears. Findi sighed, stepping closer, lowering her voice. Fifi, I know this isn't easy. But avoiding it won't make it go away. Fifi didn't respond. She stared at the floor, the weight of the decision pressing into her chest. Findi crossed her arms, frustration creeping into her tone. I treated your father. I saw him lying there, weak, afraid. He kept asking questions about you. Fifi's jaw tightened. What questions? Findi took a breath. If you knew, if you'd come, if you cared. That last word cut deep. Fifi looked away, fighting the emotions rising within her. Did she care? She wasn't sure. She didn't want to care. Findi softened, placing a hand on Fifi's shoulder. I don't know what you'll decide. But I do know this, if you don't face him now, you might regret it later. Silence stretched between them. Fifi exhaled sharply. I don't owe them anything. Findi nodded slowly. Maybe not. But maybe, this isn't just about them. Maybe this is about you. Fifi clenched her fists. The past had chased her down once again. And now, she had to decide whether to stop running. Fifi stood outside the hospital doors, her fingers twitching at her sides. The weight in her chest had settled deep, tightening with every breath. Avoiding them wouldn't erase the pain. It wouldn't change the wounds that had reopened, the memories that clawed their way back into her mind. She had spent years rebuilding herself, crafting a new life, proving, not just to them but to herself, that she was more than their betrayal. Yet here she was, hovering at the edge of the past, debating whether to step into it again. Findi stood beside her, quiet but watchful, sensing the battle raging within her. You don't have to do this alone, Findi murmured. Fifi swallowed hard, her throat tight. I don't know if I can do this. Findi reached for her hand, squeezing it gently. You faced worse. Fifi let out a slow, unsteady breath, staring at the entrance. The door was just a few steps away. A simple movement forward. But it wasn't simple at all. Findi nudged her. Come with me. Fifi hesitated. Then finally, she moved. With Findi at her side, she walked through the doors, stepping into the place where everything was about to unfold. Fifi stepped into the hospital room, her breath shallow, her heartbeat hammering in her chest. The air was sterile, thick with the scent of antiseptic and quiet murmurs from the hallway beyond. Machines beeped steadily, rhythmic reminders that life was fragile, fleeting. And then, there he was. Her father. A man who had once stood tall, whose voice had commanded obedience, whose presence had dictated the terms of her life. Now he lay on the hospital bed, tubes running from his arm, his body thinner than she remembered, his face lined with time and pain. Fifi walked beside her, calm, steady, but Fifi barely noticed. Her father stirred, his eyes fluttering open. And when he looked at her, when recognition dawned, something unspoken passed between them. Shock. Regret. A history that neither had dared confront, until now. His lips parted, words struggling to form. But Fifi said nothing. I have invested so much to my family because it felt was right thing to do. I had to cut this cord as I simply stood there, staring at the man who had abandoned her, waiting for the past to collide with the present. Waiting for the truth to break the silence. Fifi stared at the man before her, the man who had once controlled her fate, the man who had decided without hesitation that she was no longer part of their family. The silence in the hospital room was deafening. Memories surged through her like waves crashing against a brittle shore. She remembered the long nights in the UK, working tirelessly, stretching herself thin. The deadlines, the exhaustion, the constant pressure. She had sacrificed so much for them, every paycheck, every dream she had placed on hold. She sent them money, never questioning their demands, never asking if they truly needed it. Concerts? No. Social events? No. Love? Out of the question. She had remained unattached, not because she wanted to, but because she had no choice. When other people were falling in love, traveling, living life, she was wiring her earnings back home, back to the very place that had thrown her out without mercy. And what had she gotten in return? Nothing. No loyalty. No gratitude. No protection. Her mother had stood there, silent, allowing it to happen. She had watched her husband chase Fifi away, had watched her daughter lose everything, had done nothing. And now? Now they stood before her, broken, needing something again. Fifi's grip tightened around her purse. She had spent years believing she still belonged to them. That she was their daughter, even from across oceans. But in this moment, standing before the man who never cared where she slept, who never cared how she survived, she realized the truth. She was free. She had cut the cord, not just financially, but emotionally. She would help. But not as a daughter. As a stranger. Fifi's fingers clenched at her sides, her breath slow and measured, but inside she was unraveling. The man in front of her, her father, lay vulnerable, weak. Machines kept him steady. His life now depended on something beyond his control. Just as her survival had once depended on him. And he had let her fall. The weight of it all, the betrayal, the sacrifices, the years of loneliness, pressed down on her like an unbearable force. She could turn away now. She could leave him like he had left her. Let him sit in that hospital bed with nothing, just as she had once sat in the streets with nothing. That was justice, wasn't it? But then, there was another voice inside her. A quieter one. One that whispered of something else. She had already won. She had built herself into something unstoppable. She had rewritten her future. She had lifted the people who truly cared for her. Revenge wouldn't change what had been done. But mercy, it could prove that she was above the cruelty they had inflicted on her. Findy's eyes were on her now, watching, waiting. Her father tried to speak, his voice barely a rasp. Fifi. She exhaled sharply, closing her eyes for the briefest moment. This wasn't about him. Not anymore. This was about her. What would she choose? The air in the hospital room was thick with tension, suffocating, unbearable. Fifi stared at her father, the man who had once ruled over her life, who had taken everything she had given and discarded her without hesitation. And now he lay there, fragile, powerless, asking for her help without words. Her mind raced. Years of sacrifice. Years of pain. Years of silence. Did she owe him anything? She took a slow breath, her chest rising and falling as she weighed her next move. Findy's presence beside her was steady, solid, but she said nothing, because this wasn't her choice to make. It was Fifi's. Her father tried to speak again, his voice barely a whisper. "Fifi, please." Fifi clenched her jaw. "Please." That word carried so much weight now, so much meaning it never held before. She stepped forward. The movement was slow, deliberate, as if the very act of crossing the room was a battle in itself. Findy's eyes widened slightly, sensing the shift. Fifi reached into her bag, pulled out her checkbook, and signed her name, clear, sharp, decisive. The room held its breath. And then, finally, she spoke. "I'm paying for your treatment," she said, her voice steady, strong. "Every test, every scan, every medicine you need." Her father exhaled shakily, relief washing over his face. "But don't mistake this for something it's not." The relief froze. Fifi stepped closer, lowering her voice, letting every word sink in. "This isn't forgiveness. This isn't love. This isn't me coming back to you as your daughter." She placed the check down gently on the bedside table, staring at the man who had abandoned her. "I am helping you as a stranger. The same way you treated me." Silence swallowed the room. Findy swallowed hard, stunned. Her father blinked, emotions flickering between gratitude and devastation. "And Fifi?" She turned. She walked out, the past no longer a weight dragging behind her. She had made her choice. And for the first time in years, she was truly free. Fifi had walked out of that hospital room, leaving behind the ghosts of a past that no longer controlled her. She had chosen mercy over vengeance, but she had also chosen freedom. She was no longer their daughter, not emotionally, not financially, not in any way that bound her to them. Now, the road ahead was entirely hers. With Findy thriving in her medical career, with Findy's family settled in the life they never thought possible, Fifi felt the pull of something new. Fifi stood at the edge of her newfound freedom, staring into the horizon, her mind racing with possibilities. She had built others up, lifted Findy's family from hardship, reclaimed what was stolen from her, and severed the emotional chains that had once bound her to a past she no longer carried. But something was stirring inside her, something she had buried years ago, locked away beneath survival and sacrifice. A dream. She had always wanted to open a charity, to reach beyond herself, beyond Findy's family, beyond the boundaries of her own redemption. How many more people can I help? The thought pressed into her, refusing to let go. She had the money. She had the resources. More importantly, she had purpose. For the first time, she wasn't just looking back. She was looking forward. This wasn't just about giving, it was about building a legacy. A movement. A force that could change lives far beyond her own. And now, nothing was stopping her. Fifi had taken the first steps. She secured funding. She spoke to advisors. She started laying the foundation for the charity she had buried in the depths of her mind for years, an organization focused on rebuilding the lives of those abandoned, neglected, and cast aside. She thought people would rally behind her. Some did. But others twisted the narrative before she could even set foot in the public eye. Social media was on fire. The story of Fifi's rise, her rejection of her biological parents, and her choice to help strangers instead had become the talk of the town, the city, the world. The grannies in the village, who barely understood what Facebook was, were gathering at the market, demanding to know every detail. Gossip spread like wildfire, reaching far beyond the borders of her homeland. International media picked up the story. Headlines exploded across news sites, each twisting the tale in their own way. Daughter turns her back on family after wealth, justice or bitterness? Social responsibility versus personal grudges. Did Fifi do the right thing? From abandoned to powerful, how one woman built a legacy from betrayal. The debate was endless. Was she a hero or a villain? Was she selfish or a visionary? How can she pour money into strangers when her own father suffered in a hospital bed? Paying bills isn't enough. She should have welcomed him back as her father. She's bitter. Holding on to grudges instead of healing. She only cares about publicity. This charity is just for show. As the world argued over her choices, Fifi remained silent, focused on what really mattered, the people she was lifting. Because opinions didn't build futures. Actions did. The city was divided. Some praised her for breaking generational trauma, for choosing kindness without falling into toxic family obligations. Others called her selfish, a woman who had forgotten where she came from, a daughter who abandoned her roots. Fifi sat in her office, watching the debate unfold, reading the articles, hearing the whispers. It didn't shake her. She had expected it. But what came next, that was the test. Fifi knew the debate wasn't dying down. The city was divided. Some praised her resilience, others called her heartless. She could feel the weight of expectation pressing against her, demanding her response, urging her to prove herself. But she didn't rush into the fight. She focused on what mattered. Her charity officially launched its first project, a life-changing initiative for abandoned children who had been left to struggle in silence, much like she once had. It wasn't just about giving them shelter, it was about education, opportunity, and dignity. And while critics continued their endless chatter, something happened. The results of her work began to drown out the noise. People saw children thriving, families being rebuilt, futures being rewritten. Then, when the moment was right, when her impact had spoken loudly enough, Fifi made her statement. She didn't write a lengthy apology. She didn't ask for understanding. She stood before cameras, before an audience, and said only this. I was once taught that family is an obligation, that loyalty is blind, that suffering should be endured in silence. I refuse to live by those rules. I will not let the expectations of others dictate what forgiveness should look like. I gave my father what he needed. That is enough. My path, my future, my purpose, those belong to me. And I will not apologize for choosing myself. The statement was raw, unfiltered, and undeniable. And when the city heard it, the world shifted. Some still criticized her. Others respected her more than ever. But one thing was certain, she had made herself unshakable. She had taken control of the narrative. And nothing could take it away from her now. Fifi had secured her freedom. She had built her legacy. She had rewritten the story others had tried to write for her. But deep down she knew, her journey wasn't complete. She had spent years consumed by survival, sacrifice, and justice. Now, as her charity flourished and her name echoed in spaces far beyond her village, she felt the pull of something greater. Fifi sat at the airport lounge, her fingers tracing the edges of her passport, the golden ticket to a world she had never dared to dream of. The invitation to the International Women's Conference in Europe had come weeks ago, a direct result of the storm her story had caused, some praising her defiance, others questioning her choices. But none could deny one thing, she had changed the conversation. Now, as she held the boarding pass between her fingers, she felt something she had never truly known before. She wasn't bound by duty. She wasn't answering to anyone, not her biological parents, not the whispers in the village, not even the weight of the past she had carried for so long. For the first time, she could ask herself, what do I want for myself? Not for Findy. Not for her charity. Not for the world. For herself. Would she finally allow herself to love? Would she walk away from the public eye and embrace a quiet life? Would she build an empire that shifted the very foundations of power? She had choices now. Real choices. And for the first time, she wasn't afraid to make them. As her flight was called, she stood, lifting her bag, her heart steady. Because whatever she decided next, it was hers. And no one would take that away from her. She had choices now. Real choices. And for the first time, she wasn't afraid to make them. Thank you for watching Granny G Stories. For more stories, please subscribe to the channel.